Danny White had some NIL comments. Can you share those with us? Because I think they're incredibly insightful and a sign that the Vols are in prime position for the foreseeable future in the NIL realm. What did Danny White, Tennessee's athletic director, have to say?
Yeah, so this is actually a playoff when he was asked about Brian Kelly's comments with LSU, when Brian Kelly was like, LSU doesn't buy players. No. And basically,
For
Danny
the
White
record, just saying this, LSU, it's chronicled, has bought players. I never understood that argument. Everybody's buying players. It's legal to buy players. It's like saying, don't drive 40 in this 45-mile-an-hour zone. I didn't understand his comments. That's why I think I'm a lot happier if I'm Tennessee fan hearing these comments than if I'm LSU fan yesterday. Go with Danny.
Yes, absolutely. Danny White didn't just defend NIL. He basically defended NIL buying players. He said, now you want players to commit for the coach and the professors. And, he said all that stuff. But then he said, quote, if we're offering NIL packages, and that's part of the equation, any one of us in our professional life would never take a job without knowing what the details of that compensation package looks like. So is it part of their decision? It has to be. It is for every other American in any other walk of life. That doesn't make them greedy or selfish. I think that's a piece of the puzzle. Okay. That is the most vociferous defense of athletes paying attention to NIL money that I've heard any athletic director or coach give.
It's more ahead of the curve than even you're giving it credit for. And let me tell you why. Brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off anything at hemphousechatwith2ts.com, hemphousechatwith2ts.com. It is not going to be the end-all, be-all as it was with Nico Maliava. It might be for one team, two teams that are trying to rebuild and they're pretty desperate. I told you, and I didn't know how it would settle, but this is the way NIL market has settled. The top teams are going to spend some on high school recruits, but that's not going to be where the majority of their money goes. So you still have to recruit. You're not just a negotiator as an assistant coach. So kudos to Danny White for saying that is part of the equation. And kudos for him realizing he can't completely rely on NIL to build a championship football team. It takes much, much more than writing a check. He's so far ahead of the curve with that statement. If I'm an athletic director at North Nevada University, I'm stealing it and using it for my own.
No, you're right. He's absolutely insanely ahead of the curve with this.
Because, Caleb, the schools are going to have either you're an elite school or you're not. You're going to have about the same amount of money to spend as everybody else, roughly, because there's probably eventually going to be a cap too.
Right. No, exactly. And guys, if you don't think the perception of a school or backing its players or the perception of states doesn't filter its way down to recruits, you're smoking something, because it always does.
Not right now. I'm not.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, okay, just to give you an example, and I'll give you guys an example. I have no respect for the man I'm about to speak on, because I think that everything he did with this moment was a fraud and fake and phony. And ask the player he was defending about it, and he'll tell you the same thing. Mike Gundy. Remember that whole rant? I'm a man. I'm 40. Come after me. All that.
Yeah, you can see right through that thing, just like Butch Jones, that was stepping up for his player. Yeah, it was. If you're about to say it looked orchestrated, then yes, it did.
It was 1,000% orchestrated. It was 1,000% fake. The player he was
So was Fulmer, though, when he would say, well, the offensive line didn't have a very good day in practice today. We'll see how they do tomorrow in the scrimmage. Then you'd come out and be like, I did pretty good in the scrimmage today. They listen. They don't read the papers, but they listen to being called out. What? How did they hear about it then?
That's so true. Okay. Yeah, but that's a little bit less orchestrated. Mike Gundy was bullying a 20-something-year-old female reporter for writing an accurate story, and he did it all on behalf of this player that he wanted to get out that he was defending. By the way, that player came out and said that was the fakest thing ever. He transferred out at the end of the year. He said he has no respect for Mike Gundy. He said it was so obviously orchestrated. But the narrative got out there that Mike Gundy's backing his players. So it helped Oklahoma State recruit for a few years, and it helped them be very good, and it helped them almost get to the national title game in 2011. By the way, they're lucky they didn't, because now they get to whine about not playing for it. But Dave, if they got to play LSU instead of Alabama that year, what do you think LSU would have done to Oklahoma State?
Yeah, that'd have been ugly. I don't think they've ever had a championship caliber team. Maybe a team that could make a weaker 4-team playoff, or a weaker pair of teams that are in the championship game before the playoff. But getting back to Tennessee just a little bit here. Every school is going to have the same amount of money. Nobody's going to walk in and lay down that $2 million check for Nico. Sorry, Tennessee was ahead of the curve. It makes me think of Jay-Z on to the next one. It really does. Because they relied on NIL, not just, I mean, let's face it, the $2 million a year spent on Nico Iamaleava is worth it, even if he is average. And I say that because of the promotion that they got, that they were relevant, that they were then pushed around by the NCAA, so they fought back, and that was important. And they did that, and they won. So he's worth it, even if he's an average quarterback. So you may have to go get another quarterback. It may be McIntyre. Well, I'm betting you didn't promise George McIntyre, the young man, is it 2025? He'll come in. So McIntyre out of Nashville, I bet you didn't offer him $2 million a year. You know what I bet you offered him? A reasonable salary, which everybody gets as part of the Spire Group, a chance to play for his in-state home school, a good education, the same things you sold in recruiting. So Danny White, you nailed it. It's part of the equation. It's not the equation. Now, if Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss and they have to completely rebuild, maybe somebody like that makes a splash higher again. But I don't see that happening unless you're in total rebuild mode. And if you're that, you're probably not a very good program in the first place. Caleb?
You are 18,000% correct. And for those who don't know the song, on to the next one is some of the greatest life advice you'll ever get, because it's always saying you got to keep it moving. The people who relax in neutral because they're successful are the ones who always fall behind. And he was talking about artists, but in sports, it's the same thing. Dave, what made Tennessee so successful for so long? They always kept it moving. Okay. Tennessee, with Robert Nealon, was ahead of the curve in every single type of philosophy possible for football. I'm going to do a video on this one day. Robert Nealon introduced the phone to the press box. He was the first coach to do that. He introduced the lighter jerseys, the tearaway jerseys. Yeah, no, Robert Nealon actually introduced the phone to the press box and introduced film study. He was an MIT grad. He understood engineering, and he designed Neyland Stadium to allow for more communication among coaches that no other stadium had at that time. Then Tennessee, what do? They do the T for, they move from the single wing to the slot T under Doug Dickey. They do running through the T. They introduce these new traditions. They become the first school to integrate in the SEC significantly. Kentucky did technically first, but Tennessee did it to a higher level. And then in the 70s, they embraced Title IX, which props up women's basketball. And then in the 80s and the 90s, they're the school that really cashes in on national TV games, realizing let's play these non-conference games. Why did they fall off in the 2000s, guys? Because, you know this, Dave, didn't there come a semblance of, we're Tennessee. We don't have to do anything. So we'll just sit and watch the recruits come and the wins will come with it. And that's what they thought, didn't they?
Some of that. I thought there was some of that towards the end of Philip Fulmer's career as well. I want to go to the message board, and we have a new poll question we want to get out to you. But Smoky Mountain Red says, I will say it 1,000 times. After all the years of BS coaches and some leadership, it blew my mind that we were that ready for NIL. Elias says, it's been a sea change in Knoxville. Elias says, minor miracle. Are you not a little bit stunned? We're talking about how well Tennessee has handled NIL and the transfer portal. I mean, given they couldn't even hire a football coach that was competent for the longest time, but now they're suddenly managing roster movement that includes unprecedented rule changes, and they're handling that. What the hell? I mean, how did that happen?
A lot of this is luck, the timing. They hired an athletic director who's ahead of the curve, at the exact same time NIL went into effect, and NIL was always going to benefit Tennessee more than other schools because of the money they have. So it was just a perfect storm. And then also, lastly, I'm really going to kill some of our endorsements and sales, but I'll just say it. Tennessee decided that part of it's nixing the Greg Schiano hire. Tennessee broke free from Jimmy Haslam's reign of terror on that program. It was a reign of incompetence, which led to a reign of terror. And they finally decided we're not going to make moves based on what this failure has forced us to do over the past 10 years. That's what happened.
Okay, do me a favor and take 1 second and hit that like and subscribe button. Okay, go ahead and hit that like button because a great percentage of you have not done that yet. And you can also share if you're listening on Twitter. We greatly appreciate that. Go ahead and do that right now. And when I look at Tennessee and I look at the future, there was a part of me that thought that it was just NIL, that's all that could save them, and it was a short-term fix. I don't think that at all anymore.